Hello, welcome to Stronger in the Difficult Places. I'm your host, Dr. Zoe, and today we have a guest, Gina. She's a licensed professional counselor in sunny Phoenix, Arizona. She's trained in trauma and relationships and has just released her first book, Stop Avoiding It. In it, she beautifully weaves together coping skills, neuroscience, and scripture and empowers her clients to stop avoiding difficult emotions and conversations and live their lives fully. So today we're talking about how listening can change your relationships and your life. Gina, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. It's nice to meet you and just talk a little bit about listening. I love it. That's a big
Yes,
skill to have. And most people want to be good communicators, but no one ever says they want to be good listeners.
that's right. That's so right. And that's why I wanted to talk about being a good
Yeah.
listener because obviously you talk about it and
Mm.
in communication, when people and couples come to my office, rarely it's like, how can I listen and support my partner better? It's never that.
Never, never.
It's
It's
never that.
and think about it, even in school, we always had classes on how to talk, but not how to listen.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's just how it is. It's like being a good talker is one thing, but being a good listener is a free gift you can offer to people. And so it's a incredible and it does incredibly change your relationship. So
It really does. And, you know, my experience has been when someone's in a difficult relationship, they're spending so much energy and so much time on learning to be heard, on trying, I should say, on trying to be heard, on trying to be understood,
mhm,
um, that sometimes we lose that, right?
mhm, for
That
sure.
skill is lost, that desire is lost.
Mhm,
But I just want someone out there who's listening right now to think about how good does it feel
mhm,
when you've got something going on in your life, or maybe you just need to bring up a hard conversation with somebody and they actually listen.
mhm,
They hear you and you feel heard. There's
mhm,
number one, it creates emotional intimacy in the relationship, but it
mhm.
does feel so good. But we've gone and kind of just gotten ahead of ourselves. So we're going to talk all about it. But can you tell us a little bit about how you got to even talking about avoiding conversations and
Absolutely. I'm a therapist in Phoenix, Arizona, and have been working with coping skills. So I ended up believing like, oh, I see so many clients and so many of my clients need real skills to hold
Mhm,
on to. And
mhm,
so much of our time had been spent in diving deep into whatever they were going through. And so I thought I'm going to put together a class on coping skills and mix it with neuroscience and scripture.
mhm,
I have a strong faith-based group of clients that I felt like that would be the route to go. And so as I was putting it together, I was like, oh my gosh, it is so biblical to be a good listener.
wow.
And yet we are so into talking
Mhm,
and into wanting others to hear us and understand us. I like how you said that. But it's not just listening, of course. I went into radical acceptance, boundaries, forgiveness. Forgiveness is a big one, and active listening is one of my very favorites. But finding joy and sorrow, I went through all these different coping skills and put them into a live class, and just enjoyed teaching that class so much. Like first class with 100 people, and
mm,
they were all women in a lot of different socioeconomic
mhm,
levels.
mhm,
So it wasn't just people that you think like, oh, of course they have no coping skills. It's like, no, these people looked almost like they did have coping skills. But so many times they were like, I never even learned about boundaries. I don't know how to establish them, or I've never even thought about apologies, or never thought about working with my active listening. And so as I started putting it together, I had been wanting to put together a book for a while. And so as I
mhm.
started putting it together, when I was like, what would I call all my coping skills? I was like, it's just not avoiding the difficult emotions.
Yes.
And so every single one of them is about facing everything that comes up in our life
Mhm.
and all of our difficulties, how our brain is designed to actually face everything that life serves us. And oftentimes we don't feel like it because life serves us something difficult. And yet we have
Mhm.
an incredible adaptable brain that can face everything, no matter who you are or what you are or what's going on. So your brain is made for this life, and you're made for to be a human, and so everything you face is very human oriented. Although we want to say it's like, oh, it's this or it's this
Hmm.
group of people or it's this group of people that face it. It's like, no, we all face human problems,
Hmm.
and
Absolutely.
they're all very human, and we have a tendency to take our problems extremely personal. And so that was kind of the crux of my coping skills book. But it is something, as you probably do, teaching your clients this all the time. So, but
So, can we
applying,
dive a little bit into the neuroscience of listening?
sure, yeah.
Yeah,
So
tell me about that. What's happening in
actually,
the speaker and the listener?
yeah. So I first was gonna I first to dive into the why it makes it so hard to listen
Hmm.
is because when we disagree with something we're listening to, it becomes harder
Hmm.
because it's emotional. And
Right.
so we also have to pay attention to that as well. So listening has a lot to do with interpretations and how we're interpreting what we're listening to.
Hmm.
And
Yes.
that really has an impact on us. And it has a very big impact of where we're going to go into our emotional mind or if we're going to the prefrontal cortex. And I think that becomes a really important thing. So when we're in our emotional mind, all I want to do is all those survival skills of just fight or flee or
Hmm.
um, freeze. And so I want to be there. And that's when we start with all of our fights. And so we're looking for defenses and stuff.
Hmm.
And so what we want to do, and you probably do this with your couples too, is using agreement as just finding some things that you can agree with.
Right.
Even if it's like, hey, let's both agree this is a tough topic.
Yeah.
It can be as simple as that. It's like, let's just both agree we're both feeling stressed out talking about it.
Hmm.
That alone will calm the brain down, just understanding agreement. And so we want to pay attention to those kind of things of like, how do I pay attention or how does my brain want to, how do I keep myself from going into that emotional center of my mind?
Right.
And so that's a really big key. I think the other part is that like oftentimes when we are talking and we're bouncing topic to topic,
Hmm.
the brain gets even more, you get more confused. You
Yes.
cannot listen to it that well.
Right.
And
And
so even,
overwhelmed. Yeah.
right. And you see this with couples. We see this oftentimes with couples, even between parent and child. It's like, oh, you said that, and then that bounces another idea. And so you have all these ideas coming. And that's
Yes.
just really hard on the brain to
It
like
is.
keep up. The other thing that's really hard in the neuroscience behind it is like what the thing is about the neuroscience is that keeping ourselves focused on things that like the brain wants to pull in information and as it's pulling it in, keeping ourselves calm and able to like, okay, I don't understand that. So the more we don't understand,
Mm-hmm.
fascinating, the worse we are at listening.
Right.
So you and I started talking about stuff that was really hard to understand. People would just lose you. You would
And
just
out.
lose. Yeah, you
Hmm.
just get more and more out. The brain cannot comprehend all that. So as a as a consequence, as speakers, we also have to make sure that we're able to talk so that the other person can hear us.
Yes. Yes.
And even checking in with what they heard.
Hmm.
The
Yeah.
interpretation of that is totally different. We interpret it, what we hear based on all of our past experiences. And
Right.
so that becomes a really big deal as well. So those are all parts of kind of working with and understanding. So you can actually you talk a little bit faster than you can hear and comprehend. As sometimes I don't know, you've heard of those fast speakers that
Hmm.
the faster they talk, or when you push your
Yes.
like podcast on two
Hmm.
times, right? And you're like,
Yeah.
oh, it's too much, or really fast speakers, you're like, oh, I just can't. So those little things do impact our listening. And so even slowing it down for the brain keeps you slower into the prefrontal cortex. Remember, everything fast is going to go into that emotional mind because that's where we're like trying to make those
Right.
fast decisions. And so that's a really important part of the listening part of us. And so it's a big deal. I find it difficult in couples, but you might find this too. It's not easy to listen to our adult children.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, I mean, you don't look you're not quite probably at the adult, having the adult children yet,
Oh, I
but
have
you
five
are an adult.
children.
Okay. But you're an adult to talking to your mom, right? And
Right.
how well can your mom listen to you, adult to adult? And so, like, that becomes, especially when your adult child has something to like maybe their view of how your parenting went
Hmm.
or how what they disagreed with,
Hmm.
that becomes a really difficult challenge as well because
It does. Yeah.
those intimate people in our lives really have an impact on how well we listen. So that's
Absolutely.
a big one too, you know.
Yeah, no, that's
So
huge. And I have four adult children. I have
you
one
do.
child who's not adult yet, but yeah, I have four adult children, so I can
Oh, so
certainly
okay,
understand that.
yeah,
Um,
so I'm the same way. So I know at times it's very hard for me to listen to my adult children.
mhm.
It's very because they only see perspective that they saw, right?
Right,
But
right.
those becomes that's a hard one to listen to, and you kind of want to correct them, like, well, you only know half the story.
Hmm. Yeah, but I want to go back quickly, but then we can go back to talking
Sure.
to listening to adult children, which is a whole nother thing than listening in our relationships. So what I heard you saying is what's really important is one to
Agreed.
yes, okay. So
Yeah,
what I heard you say is really important is first,
yeah,
as you're listening and or as you're speaking, I guess, try to find one point of agreement, however small
yes.
it is. And
Right.
then number two, this is what I tell all of my clients. I'm like, this is communication 101. It doesn't matter what you say. The only thing that matters is what's heard. And if you're my
Mhm,
clients, you've heard that.
mhm,
I'm sure that I've said that to you. And sometimes it can feel
mhm,
frustrating because people are like, but
mhm.
wait, I said this and
Yeah,
what I said matters. I'm like, I mean, it matters kind of, but it doesn't matter at all in the context of the conversation you're having with the person. What matters
mm,
most is that you know what they heard. And so that also
so
goes
true.
back to listening. So
Yeah.
does being a good listener also include checking in and letting the person that's speaking to you understand what you've heard?
Well, absolutely. But don't you? I also think it's like if the conversation starts to go into a direction that you're surprised,
Mhm.
even just saying, like, what did you hear me say? Because I am sure you feel this too, but there are often times at the end of sessions that I'll ask my clients, like, what did you find to be the most important part of the session? And it is usually like something totally different
Or
than
maybe
maybe what
something you
I thought.
haven't even said. Has that happened to you before?
Yeah.
You're like, wait, I didn't say that. Or you'll hear your
What?
client will tell somebody else. I don't
Yeah.
know. I've heard come back maybe from a partner or something I said that I didn't say, but that's what they
Sure.
heard me say.
Yes. One time I heard one of my clients was like, "You were in my head saying whatever they said," and I
Right.
was like, "Never said
I would never say that.
But
Yes.
so I love what you just said because oftentimes we're hearing ourselves.
Mm,
We're interpreting through our own lens and we're hearing as like, even if you have a negative view of the person and they're talking, oftentimes you're going to, like everything they're saying is going to go into a negative place. And
right.
so that's a really good point to make is sometimes you aren't hearing the person correctly. You
Hmm.
definitely can't, it's hard to hear without a bias.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that
And
is one of those kind of like things that you have to pay attention to because people will say you're saying things that is like maybe they're picking up on your bias or your
body language, even, when I talk to
oh
people, when
yeah.
I talk to my children, when I talk to um, other people in my life, I will often say, your body language is telling me this, just so that I let them know this is what you're communicating. And I was just talking
Mhm.
to my daughter about this I think it was last night or maybe the night before. And I said, listen, as humans, we communicate even more through our body language than we do
Right.
with the words that we say. And so you need to pay attention to what your tone sounds like, to what your body
Ah,
is communicating.
yeah.
And so I let people in my life know, like, this is what I heard you say without words.
Mhm. Oh my gosh, tone isn't that interesting? So tone is a huge deal.
Hmm.
It is very big. Women are really we go into our fight and flight in as the voice gets more booming,
Mm-hmm.
and men actually do it as we get higher pitch. Like when if you're going like, so anyway, I was saying that this is really so the higher your voice
Mm-hmm.
continues to go, they're moving into their emotional mind. And you have to actually take check of that of like how people are listening to you because if you're noticing that you are just like there's a lot of conflict, or you're every time you speak to this one person, there's
Right.
always kind of moving. Well, it could be very much your tone. And we do struggle a lot with that because, like you said, we all want to be understood. And yet we struggle to communicate in a way that would help the other human
Right.
hear us and understand us.
But as a listener, though, how can we respond when we're hearing tones and when we're experiencing body language, when we're experiencing things that cause defensiveness in ourselves?
hmm I mean, that's a great question. One of my always my suggestion to my clients is take a drink of water. And that's a really big deal because nobody drinks when they're in their emotional mind. And so I always say, like, you need to drink a little bit. You need to remember your breath. And you actually need to remember, think of your own body systems. Like as we start to lift our shoulders up a little bit more, we get closer and closer to our ears, we're starting to get ourselves more agitated and it's very hard to hear when we're
Mhm.
agitated. And so, as a listener, if you could take a drink, if you have a drink in your hand, or if you could say, can we pause and let me have, I'm going to just grab a drink and I want to sit down and continue to listen. If you give yourself a little bit of a break, that helps. There's all sorts of systems you can do, even some of that bilateral tapping on your legs of just tapping just bilaterally each leg. I do EMDR, you probably do.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Oh, I
even
don't
if
do
you
EMDR.
use that, oh, you don't,
No.
even if we use that bilateral tapping, so we just tap, or even we can move our hands like this,
Well,
it
let's
calms the
explain
body
because
system
not
down.
everybody that's listening to the podcast can see us. Most people who listen to the
Yeah.
podcast listen just in the audio. So, can you explain first what is bilateral tapping? What does that look like,
Yeah.
and how does it help a listener as they're listening?
Yeah, absolutely. Bilateral tapping goes between back and forth, the right or left to right. So you're just moving back and forth. And it is just a calming system, the way the brain calms itself down. So if you think about when you're in REM sleep, how the eyes move back and forth, left to right, this is the same thing that just calms. So we use something called eye movement desensitization reprocessing, which is stands for EMDR,
EMDR. Hmm.
which is what we use to help people come out of trauma or use to process
Hmm.
difficult traumatic memories. We can also use it to just calm the system. So we actually teach kids when they're going through trials or they're testifying, just to move their hands back and forth, right to left. Clasp your hands as if you're holding your hands, and then just moving that back and forth. And it just calms the body system. So, what you're wanting to do when you're listening to something that you're starting to feel agitated at is calming your own system down. Because where you're not wanting to go is into your own emotional mind. You're reminding yourself that you're just listening. It doesn't mean you have to approve. It doesn't even mean that you have to agree. You're just listening. And so oftentimes I'll tell my clients to just even pay attention to say, I'm just listening. That's all I'm doing. I'm not necessarily agreeing. Just because I listen doesn't mean I have to agree. I'm
Right.
listening to their perspective. And this is a time to kind of step out, give the speaker a little space to to say their words or to say what they need to. It's like this becomes really way more challenging than it looks because it's easy to interrupt. It's easier to just look for inaccuracies.
Yes.
It's easy to just look for the bad guy, in
Mhm.
this situation. So I have to really check in with myself and kind of clear my own what I'm wanting out of the conversation as well. So that is also a big deal. It's like if I just want to find out that you were awful to me or that I'm just going to guide the conversation or my listening towards that, looking for those specific areas of conflict. So,
So when you're talking about tapping, bilateral tapping, um, I'm thinking about, okay, what message is that sending to someone who you're listening to if you're doing that right in front of them?
Mhm.
And so I would encourage someone, which sometimes I will do. I actually will take my hands and kind of tuck them underneath my legs or maybe underneath like right where my knees are. And then I'm still, my body's still, and I can just kind of almost tap right, left with each of my
Perfect.
hands underneath where someone isn't seeing. Because if you're tapping in front of somebody or swaying back and forth, it's clearly telling them, this is distressing to me. I'm trying to self-soothe. I'm not really, necessarily paying attention to you, or at least it could send that body language, that message. But that's a great way that you could do it if you're actively listening to somebody and you do
For
need to do
sure.
some
Yeah.
self-soothing. So let's talk about what are those. So you talked a little bit about what you can do when you're listening. And you mentioned something about guiding the conversation. So can we talk a little bit about listening and asking questions? Like, how are you guiding the conversation if you're listening?
Okay, so I think guiding the conversation when you're listening is to try to keep it on one topic. And just understanding that it will be a time when I'm a listener, I'm not also the main speaker. And I think that becomes a big problem because what happens often when I'm listening, you're triggering me and I'm listening to you,
Mhm.
right? And so I'm going to start going at everything you're saying. So I'm kind of interrupting
Getting
you or
defensive,
pushing.
interrupting. Hmm.
Yeah, I'm just, well, if you do that too, you do that too, right? I'm
Hmm.
going to go into all these other areas. And so it's really important that you're listening to understand instead of you're listening to defend. And that is a real mind shift. If you're saying to yourself, I'm just listening to understand, not to agree, not to do anything, just to
Yes.
understand where they're coming from,
Hmm.
that becomes a very different shift
Hmm.
than I'm listening to prove that I'm right or to prove that that person is wrong.
Right.
It's
And
it's a big shift.
yeah, it's a huge shift. And so when you're listening to understand, then all of a sudden you're becoming curious, right?
Mhm.
And so you're going to ask questions, which is very different than defending and saying no and interrupting. And when someone is talking to me and they're curious and they ask questions, guess what I get? More open, right?
Right.
I feel a sense of, oh, they actually care and they're actually curious. And
Mhm.
so I think that that's one of the best skills of a listener is to
Yeah.
become curious. And just like you said, becoming curious, it doesn't mean you're agreeing. You're just wanting to understand. And the more you understand the person that you're communicating with, the more information you have to make your own decisions, to have, deeper conversations with them.
So I love that. It's so true. I think another thing too,
Mhm.
in couples especially, and you probably have seen this too, is it is really important as the speaker. Okay, I'm going to go swing to the speaker a little bit here, but just understanding as the listener, it is hard the longer the person talks
Hmm.
and doesn't give you a break.
Hmm. Yes.
Respond.
Yeah.
That is a very difficult thing. You can only take in so much information at once. And so it is really powerful to slow it down,
Hmm.
even when you're the talker, but it's also as the speaker of just saying, okay, I might need just a break for a second to see if I'm getting everything.
Hmm.
That gives you a little bit of a break versus interrupting the whole time.
Hmm.
It's hard to do. It's hard to do because usually if that's happening, the talker is a big talker and maybe does, 6 paragraphs before taking a breath,
Hmm.
which we have that. It is really important to just say, excuse me, I just need to see if I'm getting everything you're saying.
Perfect.
And you do have to come in a little bit and talk so that the brain can actually have a little bit of like
Mm,
processing to kind of get yourself into like really hearing them. And
yeah.
so it is hard to listen to somebody who talks on and on.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, it's hard, it's sad too, because I'm sure you have clients like this too. It's sad when I do have some clients that are just outward processors
Hmm.
and they just
They
talk.
just need to talk. Yeah. Yeah.
But they get very sad that people don't seem to listen to them very well.
Right.
And so as the speaker, the less you talk, the more concise you make things, the
Hmm.
easier it is for the other person to listen.
Hmm.
And that's just understanding each other's biology a little bit.
Right, right. And as the listener who has somebody that's kind of going on and on and on and making so many points, the best thing to do is to go ahead and interrupt, but interrupt with curiosity. Interrupt with, I want to make sure I'm understanding all of this. Let's slow it down so I can get this. Can you tell me more about this? Or can you go
Mhm.
deeper into this? Okay.
Yeah. Or if you can go back to that one topic, if
Back.
like we go
Mm-hmm.
back
Mm-hmm.
and just talk about the first thing we talked about,
Mm-hmm.
uh, oftentimes this type of interchange is out of the person is getting more and more worked up. And so what you're doing is trying to see if you can bring that down a little for them too, like so that we both hear each other. Because it won't be long. We're just going to mirror each other. So it won't be long before we both get up there
Mm-hmm.
and only listen to so much. You do want to really encourage just a little bit of a breather or a break so that you can comprehend and it'd be great if you can blame it on yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I just,
Absolutely.
yeah, I just want to listen better.
So let's shift it to talking about other conversations. Specifically, we were bringing up earlier um, the relationship between a mother and a child, whether it's an adult, child, an adolescent child, they're fun, or, younger, younger ages. I know it's hard for me as a mom, and I had to be I say had because my olders are older, but I'm still doing it because I'm in the thick of parenting a 12-year-old. Um,
Right.
I have to be in that space of shutting up, for lack of a better way to describe it,
I
because my
know.
response is always to lecture, to share my
Yeah.
wisdom, to give her my advice instead of being quiet and
Hmm.
asking her questions,
Hmm.
asking her about what she thinks about something, asking her about how she perceived an encounter, an engagement, asking her about her experience. It's hard for me as a mom, but I feel like
Yeah.
now, I've been doing this for 20 some years. I've gotten some skills in it.
So
Um,
you hope you're.
yeah. So can you talk a little bit about that?
I love that because I think the point you make is great. It's like just the less you say with the older ones, the better it is. They do already, oh no, they have our lectures memorized already.
Hmm, they
And
do.
so it is one, it is one of those things that I think we respond out of fear. And it is a fear thing that comes up for ourselves as moms of just like, I'm scared they're going to make the wrong decision or a bad decision, or they
Mhm.
won't know how to fix it or something. And so all of that comes up for all of us. I mean, I think that's just a mom.
Mhm.
I mean, unfortunate, we just are wired for fear as moms, we're just scared for them and we want the best for them. So I think it comes up through a really good place, but
Sure.
it is such an incredible gift to offer is to just be quiet and to say
Mm.
less and
Yes.
to see if you can get to a place of just letting them kind of make their own decisions and you just kind of even asking them the questions that help them find their way.
Mhm.
I think that's the hard part about being a mom is they're all different ways, and sometimes it's not your way, and that is a kind of a complicated place to be. But
Mhm.
it's such a powerful gift to give to our kids is to
Mhm.
listen.
Mhm.
Like it's once again such a beautiful. It's funny at that 12-year-old. I remember when that is, and they're such talkers.
Oh my
I
goodness.
don't know
My
if you have a
daughter.
talker. Yeah, especially girls. And they're talkers, right? And they're telling you all these long stories,
Yes,
And it's so precious because it doesn't last that long.
I
But
know.
it's hard to stay focused, and so it's hard. But it's so, so sweet because you start to see their mind
Mhm.
just really, they are in a big, long story of themselves. And it's sweet, but I find it difficult at times to really tackle my own fear of what I want for the kids and to
Mhm.
listen to
Mhm.
things that I just disagree with.
Right.
Um, I have this phrase for my adult kids that I say, if anyone can do it, you can do it, which kind of means nothing.
Right.
So sometimes I just like to go there, right? It's just like
Mhm.
if anyone can do it, you can do it. Now, if they can't end up doing it, well, if anyone could have done it, they would have been able to do it. But
Right.
if they don't, then I'm fine too. So
Yes.
I feel like that less opinionated perspective
Mm-hmm.
to become even more important in our listening with people that we care about and we love and we do care about their choices.
Mm.
So that becomes a really incredible thing. Um, a couple of the scriptures that I have that go with there is out of Proverbs. It says, "Let the wise listen and
Mm-hmm.
add to their learning, and let the discerning get guidance." And I love that because it's like, let the wise listen.
Yes.
And the more you listen, the wiser you become because you're able to work through a lot of your emotional regulation.
Mm-hmm.
You are able to grow yourself and learning how to regulate even when you are starting to get scared.
Yes.
You can pull yourself back into a more regulated place. So listening becomes an extremely good power to have because it helps you practice the stuff that we need, which is
Mhm.
emotional regulation all the time. And so we need that. And so that even paying attention to how wise it is to listen,
Yes.
and how foolish it is to talk too much.
Yep. Well, because when you're listening, you're gaining information. When you're talking, you're just spewing whatever, maybe in your brain. But it just makes so much sense that the wise listen. How else
Yes.
do you learn and understand? If you're just talking to someone constantly, you've actually learned nothing about them. Now, maybe they've learned something about you, but you haven't learned anything about them.
Mm. And you kind of will leave a conversation if you've done too much of the talking, feeling rather empty because as another human, you do want to learn when
Mhm.
you're with somebody else. And so even though it seems like, I'm always listening and stuff, if you are an always listening kind of person, like that is very cool to be able to be there because that means you have been able to face a lot of different emotions as you've listened and kept yourself really calm and cool. But it's also a real invitation to allow the other person to listen to you too. And
Mm.
so it's becoming like being able to give the gift of giving that back and forth because this kind of conversation is just powerful for every human to go back and forth to listening and to speaking.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So, what's one last word of advice that you could give a woman who's listening to this and realizing I might have difficulty listening in my relationships, and maybe I have some really good reasons for that. How do I get better at this? What's a first step, and will it really benefit me?
Well, the benefit is really, you'll benefit. Okay, let's start with benefits because
Mm,
the benefits you get from being a good listener is connection. And that's a really cool thing to be able to do. I'm sure you and I and everybody listening they have a friend that listens well to them. And that is a
hmm
gift. And if you can be that kind of a mom,
hmm
or even that kind of a partner that you can actually listen when it's hard.
hmm
I don't even mind if you listen and say, this is really hard for me to listen to, but I really want to listen. I really
Yeah.
want to understand where you're coming from. Um, that even just naming that emotion for
hmm
yourself when you are listening becomes really powerful. So even using the benefits of like really our ultimate goal is connection. Our ultimate goal as humans is that you're going to do so much better in life using connection
hmm
and thriving in your connection. And so when you feel like don't have, and so I often have this, like clients will say, I don't have many friends. I'm struggling to connect with
hmm
people. I often will say, how good of a listener are you?
hmm
Are
Yeah.
you listening to people? Are you asking them questions? Are you using your curiosity? I like how you brought up your verbal and your nonverbal
Right.
cues.
Yeah.
Are you leaning in? Do you act interested?
hmm
So those little things can help a lot. So so first of all, that's how it benefits you. It grows your connections. It also helps you in your emotional regulation. But then at the beginning of that question was like, how do I even start? And what would that even look like?
Yeah.
Um, it's like, okay, how you start is like, I really want to hear what you have to say.
hmm
You
hmm
start with asking questions if someone isn't forcing you to listen to them. that becomes a really important thing. It's like, I'm just curious of how you see that, or I'm just curious about what is going on for you when that happens, or those kind of questions, those open-ended questions open up a conversation for you. And so that becomes really important. It's like asking good questions that people can dive into and connect with you a little bit. And those take a little while, but you start to understand like little ways that you can connect to somebody. Maybe you find a common interest with somebody, and those conversations will help.
Hmm.
So, any sort of ways that you can promote listening becomes such a valuable skill.
Right.
And so, and what's the difference between active listening and passive listening? I would say passive listening we can do often while we're scrolling on our phone.
Hmm. Hmm.
That does leave the other person very empty as well. And so we can
Mm.
passively listen while we're, do busy doing things. And active listening actually takes an active role in listening
Right.
to them, of like looking at them, paying attention, nodding your head, understanding what you're listening and talking about. And so that becomes that is it's a very active, non-passive way to listen to someone versus just sitting there,
Hmm.
not listening.
Hmm. Yes. Yeah, that makes sense.
Is two ways to listen.
Yeah. And, for a woman out there who's feeling very unheard in her relationship and the thought of listening feels like too much, I just want to encourage her that it doesn't have to be an either or. What I mean is that you actually choosing to listen to your partner, even if you don't feel your partner is listening to you, is modeling behavior that you want also. And although, I don't suggest continuing to give in a relationship when there's no reciprocity. I think at some point we have to kind of mirror um, back what's given to us, or at least we need to make sure that it's reciprocal. It may be something to just try to implement in your relationship and seeing if you're active listening, or I should say, seeing how your active listening
Mm,
affects the relationship.
totally agree. I think also even complimenting people when they do listen to you, of just it means a lot to me that you just heard me.
Hmm.
That means a lot to somebody. So in a difficult couple relationship, oftentimes they don't give much appreciation to each
Right,
other about anything.
right.
And so when we want to increase something in our relationship by appreciating when somebody does offer us a little bit of listening, that alone will start helping growing a listening kind of relationship.
Yes.
Oftentimes we've just moved into only listening to prove myself to be right, or for me to prove that you're a jerk.
Right. Yes.
And if that's the only reason I'm listening to you, is so I can one more time prove to myself that you are the jerk I believe you are,
Mm-hmm.
that becomes that's a bad interpretation of listening, because I'm not really trying to listen to understand. I'm just listening to prove my point.
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for sharing. Can you tell my listeners how they can find you?
Absolutely. I'm on Instagram under Mindhelm, Mindhelm. And I'm also mindhelm.org as
Mhm.
well. But I have a coping skills class and a little online class. And of course, my book, Stop Avoiding It, on Amazon. So it's like a bunch of different skills, but I do go over active listening a lot in that book too. So,
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
yeah.
All of that will be in the
Thank you.
notes, and it was a wonderful conversation. Thank you for coming
Yeah,
on.
thank you so much. It was fun.